Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man on. His name is Tim Hale. He is a guy who just got out. Was it jail or prison, Tim?
It was both. 2 years in the D.C. jail, sir. 1 year on Fort Dix prison.
It is Tim Hale. He was a January 6th defendant. He was imprisoned and jailed for 3 years, as he said. We want to get into the story. Tim, first of all, nice to meet you. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
You've got Matt Perna on your chest there, on your lapel, right?
I do indeed, sir. Yes.
Now, we've had Jerry on, his aunt, and she's fighting the good fight to make sure his memory is still alive and well. He was a guy that was there nonviolently. You were nonviolent as well. And he was taking some selfies, and he was just documenting what was going on. And because they added a charge of possible terrorism or attempted to do something about terrorism, he ended up taking his own life. And I'm glad that you and Jerry and others are keeping his memory alive and reminding people what the DOJ did to people like you and people like Matt. I've got to ask you right up front, was there ever a moment where you thought to yourself, I don't need this, I'm out of here, and thought about doing something bad to yourself or not?
Never quite like that, but I was in solitary for about a year, and that's pretty rough on the psyche. But I will say about Matt, the reason I especially want to bring attention to this is because now that I'm out, I can show the public some of the video the government withheld. That man took his own life based on lies. You know, the fact is, I have video I just released showing he was pushed into the building. He didn't choose to go in. He was pushed in and almost crushed to death.
Wow.
And I just released that on Twitter, you know, and I hope, you know, not to plug myself, I hope people realize that their lives have really been destroyed. I got off lucky compared to a lot of people. People need to know how bad this really is. Because unfortunately, Matt is just one of the suicides. There are others. And, you know, people talk about the deadly insurrection, but the truth is the only people who died at the Capitol were protesters.
No, exactly right. It's Tim Hale, January 6th protester. He went to jail. He went to prison. I want to talk about this solitary confinement thing in a moment, but follow him on Twitter or X. It's Lewis of Monmouth, and it's Monmouth. I don't know if that would be Louis of Monmouth, historically, but you're from New Jersey. You're from Monmouth, New Jersey, right?
Yes, sir. And Lewis is just my middle name, so
nice.
Just kind of snarky.
It sounds very regal and very monarch-like, which is fine. Lewis of Monmouth. Go follow him on X or Twitter. So you didn't have an Eighth Amendment for some reason. You didn't have the Sixth Amendment for some reason. All of your freedoms and liberties given by the Creator were suspended by the government that's not allowed to suspend them. Tim, at what point do they have to pay the piper? They did it so wrong to you and 1,800 other defendants that it blows my mind. You just didn't have due process. Why?
Unfortunately, you know, I'm not a partisan person, but this is a political witch hunt. You know, part of it is because they're willing to do anything to go after President Trump. Another thing I think is that they just want to crush any dissident views within the country. They don't want anybody to ever protest a rigged election. And honestly, I think that another part of it is that it's just the slippery slope. You know, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about January 6th. The important thing is that we realize that it's been used as a Trojan horse to gut the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
So, you know, what they did to me and a lot of the guys I was locked up with, now they can do to pretty much anyone. You know, they had COVID as a veil so that they could take away our right to see lawyers and a whole bunch of other things. This was a Trojan horse. This was a slippery slope. People think, oh, that's a fallacy. Slippery slope's not a fallacy when it comes to common law and legal precedent. Now that they've done this, now they can do it to anybody. And the pendulum might swing back to the left one day. Who knows? But all Americans should be concerned about this.
It is Tim Hale. Obviously, it wasn't an insurrection. Nobody was charged with insurrection. Nobody was found guilty of insurrection. No law or legislation was passed in Congress talking about an insurrection, which is what's required by the third section of the 14th Amendment. So all that's just a lie. But they have enough people saying it that enough people believe it. So how do you rise above that and make people understand? Most of us were nonviolent. Most of us didn't really break any laws that we thought we were breaking. Most of us did not try to stop some sort of an official procedure. How do you get through to people that are so indoctrinated by the narrative that you and others showed up to perform an insurrection? By the way, no firearms on any of you guys and gals, so you couldn't have done an insurrection even if you wanted to. But how do you combat that?
Well, you're absolutely right. And I mean, we could get into hypocrisy or the double standards of congressmen pulling fire alarms or whatever, but I think that it's important to realize that there's a lot that's been held from the public in the past 3 years. So I mentioned Matt Perna, but I had to wait, unfortunately, for my sentence to be up, but I'm now releasing a lot of the video the government has withheld. So I'm showing that there are federal agents in the crowds. I'm showing undercover cops who are inciting people. I'm showing agitators. And I'm releasing statements from people I was incarcerated with showing that there were Antifa there, that there were informants. A lot of, some of them were involved in drug conspiracy. So they got, turned out as agitators by the feds. There's a lot the public doesn't know. And this is a lot to take in because even though people are waking up, that's still way more than you're hearing, really anywhere. It's a lot, and it's why I think that they're withholding all this video. They've been doing it for 3 years. They didn't, I have hopes for this Speaker Johnson. I hope they release the video, but it's not coming out. And I think the reason is because, and this is my answer. I know it's a long answer, but the truth is that we need to see what they're holding back. Everybody thinks they know the story because they watch CNN repeat the same 20-second clips for 3 years.
Right.
But
how do you have, Tim, how do you have access to the video? Was it part of your case?
Yeah, and a lot of other people's cases. And this is why they keep a lot of people in pretrial detainee status. This is another thing you can, another box you can check, is they don't want people seeing the video. So when it comes to Roseanne Boylan's death at the Lower West Terrace Tunnel, when it comes to really anything, there are just these things that conflict with the official narrative that they've kept, hidden. And like I said, the video they're trying to release now, I mean, why are you blurring people's faces? You're not protecting defendants. You're actually probably protecting assets in the crowd. Again, I hate to assume bad faith here. I'm glad that any video is being released because I think it will largely exonerate the vast majority of people. But there are a lot of legal questions here. The precedents we set today are going to impact generations. An injustice to one is an injustice to all, and justice delayed is justice denied. 3 years. I still have friends that are locked up. They haven't even gone to trial yet. And some of my friends who did, unfortunately, the DC. Look, I have nothing against the people of DC, but they're very obviously biased, and nobody's getting a fair trial in DC. So I have friends who are in prison now, and they're not out here like me. I got off lucky. I have to speak out because they can't. BOP is not going to let them talk, and so you have people who, if that obstruction charge doesn't get tossed out, if they don't get pardoned or something, I don't know. Like they have no voice, and no one's going to know the real story with them. They're not going to get a fair shake. And I have to speak on their behalf because it's not just Matt Perna. It's not just Ashley Babbitt. It's not just Roseanne Boylan. Unfortunately, you got a lot of people now who are, even though they are alive, they are going to be rotting away for years and years. And a lot of people think it's funny, and it's not.
No, it's not. It's Tim Hale. Go to his website, patriotfreedomproject.com. Patriotfreedomproject.com. You can follow him on X. Lewis of Monmouth is his handle over there. Let me go over a couple of things. You glossed over. You're very quick-witted, so you glossed over the whole congressman pulling the fire alarm thing. You basically were charged with a felony of obstructing an official procedure when he was charged with almost nothing. He had a fine, and it's going to be completely expunged from his record. It's a misdemeanor for obstructing an official procedure. It's the same charge, is it not?
I mean, essentially, if you've looked into this, I'm sure you know, like the obstruction charge goes back to the Enron scandal for shredding documents. It has nothing to do with a procedure in that sense. In fact, the original statute is about tampering with witnesses, so that's why the document thing was just an addendum. It's not supposed to be about interrupting any congressional hearing. Otherwise, what about Code Pink or the environmental riots?
What about Hunter Biden last week showed up and interrupted a congressional hearing? I mean, honest to God, you could charge everybody with that if you wanted to. So why were you put in solitary confinement? Are you some violent guy with a violent past? Or did you bring a tank to the Capitol that day? Why were you locked up for 23 hours a day in solitary? Fill me in.
Well,
what did they say to you?
Well, they certainly tried to, suggest that I was some right-wing extremist. They went They went a year back to a time when I was an actor, an amateur comedian. They took, some dark humor of mine out of context. But I mean, ultimately, everybody, everybody that I was in there with, no matter what their charges were in solitary confinement. So it didn't matter if you had assaults or if you had misdemeanors. It did not matter. And the reason was, officially, was COVID. COVID was used as a reason to deny us pretty much everything. I had a trial scheduled for November of 2021 that got shoved all the way to, I believe it was May of 22 because of COVID.
Wow.
You had lack of access to attorneys because of COVID. You couldn't have family visits because of COVID. You couldn't get a haircut because of COVID. I had hair down to here. I was in the military for 12 years. I'd never had long hair. You had people developing sores because of how unhygienic it was. And, you had pretty much anything that, as a pretrial detainee, in jail, sure, but as a pretrial detainee, by law, you're supposed to have the same civil liberties as a free individual because
Yes.
you have not been convicted. And that just did not apply.
But
And
you also, by law, have to get bail. Why didn't you guys get bail?
I mean, that was another reason. Chief Judge Howell, she created what were called the Cressman factors based off of, I guess, the bond decision of William Cressman, one of the Proud Boys, who was locked up with me.
Right.
And basically, they invented this standard for who gets bail and who doesn't for January 6th. I mean, they basically created an entire new legal class, which, from my opinion, not a lawyer, but I think that frankly violates the 14th Amendment and equal protection. You're treating us like a special subclass of criminals, despite the fact that you haven't created a new class of legal statutes to charge us with. I mean, imagine if you did that for any, leftist agitators or whatever. I mean, I would be just as outraged, and it's important to remember something. This can happen to anyone. Back in the day, the feds went after the peace movement. They went after the labor movement. They went after the civil rights movement. So no matter where you are on the spectrum, this can happen to anyone if you create that precedent. It doesn't matter if you don't like Trump. I mean, this is a terrible precedent to set legally.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you think about me. It doesn't matter what you think about Trump. It doesn't matter what you think about most people. We have the presumption of innocence. And frankly, just from a legal perspective, this country was founded upon the principle that the defendants have just as much rights under the Bill of Rights as the government. More, actually.
You're right. The defendants have more rights. The defendants are the ones that always get the benefit of the doubt. The defendants are always innocent until proven guilty, something they didn't do in this case. And it blows my mind. You're right about the 14th Amendment, due process under the law. I get it. But the 8th Amendment is the first one. You have the right to bail. You have the right to not have cruel and unusual punishment. You have the right to an attorney. I think that's the 6th Amendment. The idea that they can say, well, some disease showed up from China, therefore you get none of the rights given to you by the creator, we can restrict all of them, is just untrue. So do you have like a major lawsuit against the government? I think you should.
To be honest, I think the statute of limitations for that is probably passed for most people. But it would be nice if people were rewarded for being entrapped and being wrongfully imprisoned and all that. But I'm willing to settle on just people finding out and doing whatever is possible to help those who are still incarcerated. I mean, that's really it. I've never been a materialistic person. People are like, I don't like that term, really materialistic, but I mean, the truth is,
but Tim, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's about stopping them next time. It's
Absolutely.
not about money. It's about them not doing it to my family. It's about them not doing it. And you're right. I don't want them to do it to Antifa either. By the way, they're not. They're locking up Antifa, letting them out no cash bail.
Well, they're
doing way worse than you. I mean, what specifically did you do? Looking back, let's say that you didn't spend 3 years in jail. If you and I were having a beer, and I don't drink beer, but if you and I were sitting down and just having a chat, and you told me about January 6th, what did Tim Hale do that day?
Well, what I did was I said bad words because I saw the cops attack people. I got mad. Shouldn't have said some things, but at the end of the day, those were words.
Yes.
I ended up walking into the Capitol building. I wandered around for, I'm going to say 30 to 40 minutes. The cops told us they had to escort us out, and then we left.
Did you fight them? Did you take a fighting stance? I'll kick your ass if you kick me out. Did you hit anybody? Did you break anything?
No, I didn't. I didn't assault anyone. I didn't steal anything from an office, and I definitely did not put my feet up on a desk. But it's, It's just no, absolutely. I took selfies with statues. I danced in the Capitol Visitor Center.
How dare you?
I know, I'm a monster.
And Tim, for that, you lost 3 years. And again, if you don't want the money, fine, donate it. But I mean, the government needs to pay to be put back in check. The government needs to understand that trying to use you as a way to stop Trump from winning is not going to be a winning equation for them. That's really the lesson here, right?
I mean, it should be, because think about this too. I mentioned those times in the past where people have been politically persecuted or prosecuted, but this is an inquisition, the likes of which I don't think America's ever seen. The sheer amount of people, over 1,400 people now, and they're claiming they're going to get 1,000 more. I mean, this
and Biden 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago bragged about it. Like, oh, hey, we got all these people, isn't this great? People are cheering in the audience, not even realizing they can be the next to go, just for any reason.
It's shameful because no matter what we think about riots, they're not new in America. And if you really want to see leadership, this isn't a partisan thing. I was a history major. If you look at George Washington, if you look at John Adams, when our country was young and very fragile, those presidents pardoned people for rebellions. I'm not saying January 6th was a rebellion,
right. But
if you bought that narrative, why wouldn't you show leniency to your own citizens? We're not foreign terrorists. We're not, agents of a foreign regime. I mean, These are American citizens who, no matter what you think about the election, I have my views, and I'm not going to change there. You had look, some people did things they should not have done. There was incitement, and I encourage people to look at the video to see it now, because I'm posting it. But even if you took the story at face value, it does not make sense. The overreaction is astounding. It makes it look like what conspiracy theorists are saying it was, which was a color revolution by the deep state. It makes it look like they have something to hide.
Well, they obviously have something to hide. That's why the January 6th committee got rid of everything. And that's why it was a fake committee, didn't even follow their own procedures to create the committee. That's why they did a made-for-TV thing, produced by ABC News every night.
That's obstruction. They deleted, they just deleted all this evidence. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene was just talking about this.
They should all go to prison, shouldn't they?
Well, if equal protection, one standard. If that's what the standard is, then
as if there were one standard in this country, and there isn't. Hopefully, we can get a semblance of that back soon. It's Tim Hale. Tim, we're frankly out of time. People should go to PatriotFreedomProject.com. PatriotFreedomProject.com. Follow him on X. Lewis of Monmouth is his full name. No hyphenations. No punctuation. Go and follow him there. And do me a favor and come back again. We just barely scratched the surface here. Okay.
Absolutely. There's a lot to tell. So thank you for having me on, sir. I appreciate it.
Tim, I appreciate you. We're back after this. Stay right here.